Everybody, welcome to a new episode of House Calls the Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Waldron, and this week I've got a very special guest, Dr. Hugh House, commonly known as Dr. House or Ty to some people. I thought it was important that we talk to Ty because we couldn't get anybody else, and I seriously thought it'd be good so we could understand how we've gotten to this point and what the purpose of this podcast is all about. Giving you some insights into the thinking of the mastermind of Dr. Hugh House. It's scary because once you get into that brain of his, there's a lot going on. Ty is the backbone of this organization. Interesting because people have often referred to him as a spineless jellyfish, but that's not the case here. Ty's been a huge hit. I mean, we've even gotten of all of our fan letters, the one we got was basically addressed to him. I'm sure he'll be embarrassed, but I'll share it with you. But let's see, dear Dr. House, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for the kindness, compassion, and knowledge you have shared through your podcast. Your ability to blend intelligence with warmth is truly remarkable. You listen to your guests with patience, explain with clarity, and treat with such dedication that it's clear you're not just a doctor, you're a healer in every sense of the word. Of course, your sense of humor never goes unnoticed. Even in moments of concern, you have a way of bringing lightness and reassurance, making each episode less daunting. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that you're also effortlessly charming. It's also almost unfair that one person can be so intelligent, kind, and let's be honest, so handsome. But beyond that, it's your heart that truly makes you stand out. Your unwavering commitment to your patients and the way you go above and beyond does not go unnoticed. Thank you for all that you do, not just for me, but for everyone lucky enough to listen to you. The world is a better place with doctors like you in it. With appreciation and admiration, Susan House, which ironically enough is the same name as his mother, I think that kind of sums it up. So enjoy the episode. Welcome to a new edition of House Calls the Podcast. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Hugh Osgood House. One time a co-host of the podcast, but today we're switching chairs and he will actually be the guest. Matt Damon was supposed to do it today, but he canceled at the last second. And there are a couple other people that canceled, so we're stuck with Ty. And I'm excited about this because Ty doesn't know what's going to happen. And you can tell he's nervous. He's
I just got nervous.
I know.
I was
Even
fine
better.
before.
So, Ty, this is, I would say that this podcast and this empire that we're building is definitely, I think you were the spark. So let's get into that. I want to understand how you got to this point of your life as a social media influencer, podcaster, a orthopedic surgeon, a avid outdoorsman, husband, father, friend, uncle, cousin, son, and all around asshole. So yeah, I would like to know how we got to where we are today.
So, do you want to start with how I became a world-renowned podcaster, or how I became a father?
Well, the father one, I've seen the videos, and no one wants to see those. But I would like to start with what got you into medicine.
Okay. So I am a third-generation doctor. So my grandfather was an ENT, but back then, specialization was kind of weird. So he was a general practitioner and then did a residency in ENT. And he was actually pretty well known because he was the doctor for the firemen and the police force in Washington, D.C. So interesting. I operated it on a neighbor of ours' elbow years back, 15 years ago. And when she told her doctor who was going to fix her elbow, he goes, you got to be kidding me. That guy's got to be 100 years old. And no, it was a different Hugh House, but I was named after my grandfather. And then my dad was an orthopedic surgeon. Came to it a little bit different, was that he wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. And he was in a residency at Cleveland Clinic, and he got drafted into Vietnam after his internship. And he did 2 years in Vietnam as a Green Beret. this is kind of a long drawn out story, but
As all
the
of yours are, but yeah.
yeah. The point was he got back, did another year at Cleveland Clinic on his way to his dream of being a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he did not like the real world, so he wanted to get back in the military. They didn't need cardiothoracic surgeons. He did a lot of orthopedics in Vietnam, and he was like, I really like orthopedics. They need orthopedics, so he did his residency at Walter Reed. My point of telling my whole story about my dad is because I got into orthopedics, but it was from a very different path. So
Wait,
I did.
real quick. I want to back up. So your dad, Butch House, Dr. Butch House, Dr. House to me, um, Green Beret. Was he upset that you liked Raspberry Beret?
I don't think he knew that I
Okay, all right,
listened to Prince.
okay, all right. Just thought I'd ask.
And honestly, I don't think I listened that much Prince, but I am amazed by Prince as what an incredible musician he is, but also how many songs he wrote
Oh,
that are not actually his song, like that
yeah,
he wrote for country
covers. Yeah,
stars and all those people. So my point being, I was a kid who people would constantly say, "Are you going to be a doctor when you grow up?" And like any kid, I was like, "No, I'm going to be the quarterback for the Baltimore Colts." Colts leave town. Last time I cried was actually my sophomore year of high school, 1983, when the Colts left town, and Donald
yep,
Schaefer was on the cover of. So then I switched it over. I was going to be the quarterback for the Redskins because we talked about this. I came from a mixed marriage.
right.
My dad's family was Redskins fans. My mom's family was Colts fans. So it's okay that I like both. And then somewhere around high school, I'm like, you don't even play quarterback on the JV football team. Like
I was going to get to that.
you're like the third wide receiver. So I started thinking that I might need another dream.
Okay.
So I went to college with no idea what I wanted to do. But in the back of my mind, I had been good at science in high school. So I always took the prerequisite science classes. Um, and your sophomore year, you're supposed to take chemistry and physics. And I
Right.
was playing lacrosse, so I only took chemistry because I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Thought about business, really thought about being a teacher, uh, and then ultimately uh, did well in the science classes and said, I'm going to apply to med school. At the same time, I applied to a bunch of jobs around the area to teach. And I was a history major in high school. So I thought about being a teacher and maybe like a JV lacrosse coach. And people say, why would you want to be a JV lacrosse coach? Because if you're from Baltimore, like we are, the varsity lacrosse coaches get fired.
Right.
The JV lacrosse coach is a secure job.
Well, so I could totally see you as not a professional athlete, but as a teacher. Because I mean,
Yep.
that's really what you still are. Whether
Yep.
we like it or not, you're always teaching,
Always
but
teaching. So
always teaching something. But it's very interesting, and that was one of my questions I was going to have for you. That if you weren't a doctor, you probably would have become a teacher.
yes. So two stories I want to tell besides this. So the first one is right when I had turned 21 years old, I met my current wife. So we were in college, and my pickup line was telling her about my summer job, which was I was going to be a maintenance man in our community, which meant I was going to ride on the back of a trash truck 2 days a week. Great job. I did it with my friends. So so that was a good pickup line because it made me interesting. But then as we started dating, I realized I I probably need a little bit more than that. I kind of thought I was going to maybe drift around until I was 30 and figure out what I was going to do with my life. But once I started dating her, I was like, I want to have kids. I probably need a real job. So when I started thinking about that, I knew I did not think I wanted a desk job where I was going to be sitting down all day. I started thinking that medicine sounded like real interesting. Plus all the different areas of medicine. I was like, there's so many different options once you go to med school that it's a good place to start. But I still had in the back of my mind that I might be a teacher. Now, I had a backup plan if I didn't get into medical school was
Which was
I was going to consider I was going to be a teacher or and see how I liked it and see if that was a good life for me. And then if I wanted to at some point transition to business or whatever. And in private schools, you don't have to have a teacher certificate. So I had a lot of incredible teachers when I was growing up who did it for, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. And then they went off into the corporate world or went to law school or went to grad school. So it wasn't uncommon to be like, hey, let's try this for a couple of years. And at the same time, I'd applied to med school and my grades were pretty good. My MCATs were really good. And I got into almost every med school I applied to. So
Yay,
um,
Ty.
I'm interviewing for a teaching job at Gilman and I remember I'm with Don Rogers, who he was my JV lacrosse coach, but he was also my sixth grade math teacher. And I was 12 years old in sixth grade. He was 22 years old. And I remember sitting down with him being like, what the hell happened? Like, we're the same age now. Like, how did this happen? Because, the difference between being 22 and 32, you look no different for a lot of people. And he was just like, Ty, teaching's great. I love it. But if you got into med school, you should give it a try.
So wait, first off, is that the same teacher we ran into a downtown Annapolis summer who was shocked that you were alive and not in jail, and that you actually became a doctor?
No, that was Mr. Schmick.
Okay, fair
Yes,
enough.
yeah, he was the dean of students, but more importantly, he was the fifth grade teacher when I was in fifth grade, and he did have a little bit of a look of shock on his face.
As we all do. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie, I still
yeah,
do. I
yeah.
still do.
So there was the and factor that I was like, okay, this whole thing is happening a little faster. I always wanted to have a family, so I was like, let's get a real job, and I went into medicine with our other best friend, Dr. Klepper. I mean, we
Time out.
drove to school together to med school the first day in the Klepper station wagon, the same wagon that we used to put the keg in the back. And he lived on our mine and Ann's floor for probably the first 2 or 3 months of med school until we
So,
got to
but
bed.
so I, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to call bullshit on your story.
Mhm.
Um, so there was, and so you never wanted a real job. You were a trash man. You were dating it still is a beautiful, nice woman from Dallas, from the Highland Park area, and you were a trash man. And so your pickup line was, "Hey, I'm really interested. I'm a trash guy."
Yeah.
Well, if you got Ann with trash guy, I mean, Lord knows what I would have gotten down there. So you wow her with, "Hey, I'm going to be a ski lift operator and pizza delivery guy," and then
Yeah.
med school.
So,
So her parents hated you.
yeah. So I do want to mention that. So I got into med school, but I basically took my physics class senior year. So
Yeah.
I had to take a year off anyway.
Yeah.
And that's where Ann and I headed out to Colorado and I was a chairlift operator. And you and I got into a huge argument
Our only one.
at a bar, where basically I said I could be anything I want to be in life. And you were like, no, you have a science mind. You're good at science. You can only be a doctor. And my point is, I think I was kind of brought up to be like, if you work hard enough, you can be whatever you want in life. Now, I know there's probably restrictions to that. I probably can't be a concert violinist, but I think being brought up telling kids that if you work hard, you can be anything. You don't have to be just a two-bit loan shark. Uh, that, that that you can be anything. And I think that was one of the great things that my parents did was they instilled that into me. I think also when your dad's a doctor, you're not like, oh gosh, that must be so hard
Right.
to be a doctor. You think of it as a very doable thing. But my main point was I went in with a very open mind, what kind of doctor I want to be. I didn't go in being like, I'm going to be just like my dad. I went in kind of thinking, oh my gosh, this is a whole smorgasbord. And I did have the whole thing of that I want to have something where every day is unique. I'm not sitting down at a desk doing meetings all day long. Um, the classic thing of, okay, I'll be helping people and I'll have a good lifestyle. And the funny thing is, with the not wanting to be in meetings all day, I think I would love meetings. Start the meeting,
You would be you'd be a time waster.
tell them some story about 1980s wrestling, and then get into the real meeting. And then as we're leaving, I talk about the Ravens. I would love meetings.
Okay, so Mrs. Klepper drove you and Brian in the station wagon to your first day of medical school. Did you both have brown baggage that day with Ty and Brian written on there with his ruffles and turkey sandwich?
So we did brown bag some.
What made you love orthopedics? Why orthopedics? Why I could see you being a pediatrician. I could see you being
So
proctologist, actually.
yeah,
But who?
I'm gonna tell you that whole story, but first, I do want to shout out a Shorewood family because uh, Joe and Eddie Morris um, are from Shorewood. They're pretty well known OBGYNs in the Annapolis area, and they both had a bunch of kids. Eddie had four, Joe had five, and I remember distinctly uh, being like, I want to kind of be like those guys. I want to have a bunch of kids. It's a good lifestyle to be a doctor. And I actually went in thinking that I might be an OBGYN.
Huh?
Um, and my story is I was over at the Morrises with a friend of mine who was babysitting. You know her, and she was babysitting, and little Khaki Morris, like, they were putting all the kids to bed, and little Khaki Morris like put her hands up, and I was like, for me, like, and I never had a like, I mean, I had a little cousin, I carried her around some, probably dropped her, but I was like, man, this is the life. You're a doctor, you're helping people, you got a family, and you get to, and I loved kids growing up, so I always knew I wanted to have kids. So that's my shout out to the Morses. I was kind of like, I think I might be an OBGYN and this might be my life kind of thing. So I went in very open minded.
Right.
Then you also know Dr. Appelfeld.
Yep.
So he was one of mine and Klep's mentors. Um, and I really liked cardiology also. And then Dr. Makoviak was an infectious disease specialist, and Dr. Woodward, who's Dr. Appelfeld's father-in-law. Uh, he was about 80 by the time I was in med school, but he was such a stud giving lectures. And I was like, these
Yep.
guys are like the giants. So I went in, those are your first 2 years. I went into my third year totally open minded with what I might be. And honestly, when I scrubbed on surgeries with my dad, he was a hand surgeon. So it was kind of some of the more soft tissue, delicate stuff in the hand. And he still did some general orthopedics. So he did a lot of like arthroscopy of the knee and the shoulder. And when I got to Maryland, it was more like trauma, shock trauma kind of stuff where you look at the x-rays in the conference and it's all this hardware. And I'm like, I'm not a guy like your brother who likes to build decks and do stuff. I'm like, I don't know if orthopedics is for me. Like, I don't know if I want to start throwing screws and plates and cutting bones and all
Right.
that stuff, which is kind of funny. To fast forward is that once I got into residency, I love that stuff. Like, that's part of my favorite thing is when everything's blowing up and putting stuff back together. But at the time, that was very different than what my dad did. So I was like, oh, this is kind of strange. So your med school, your first 2 years are mostly books and science and kind of like college. Your third year, you start rotating through everything.
Right.
So I'm all excited for my OBGYN rotation. And I'm basically like, this is going to be incredible. You're bringing life into the world. It's got to be the happiest job you can have. Everybody's so excited to have a baby. And I'm at GVMC on my rotation and I get the call to deliver a baby, right after dinner. And I'm like, man, this was incredible. The parents are so happy. Baby's healthy. It was so cool. And then we did a couple C-sections. I was like, that's really cool. And then at like 2 in the morning, they called me to, I woke me up to deliver another baby. And I was like, really? This can't wait till the morning? I'm like, this is awful getting up in the middle of the night. And I checked OB off my list. I was like, I can't do it.
One night. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So then I did my surgery rotation and I loved the surgery rotation. I loved the head of surgery. I thought it was great, but I didn't think I wanted to be a general surgeon. Didn't get much exposure to ENT. I might have liked that. But then I loved my ortho rotation. And so it wasn't like I want to be exactly like my dad. And my dad didn't even go in thinking he was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I didn't go in thinking I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. He would say stuff every once in a while, like I'd be like, and I'm not going to say the name of the specialties, but he'd be like, I'm thinking about being this specialty. And he'd be like, well, that's fine if you want to hang out with that specialty, like stuff like that. But so we ended up in the same specialty. which is funny because we also went to the same college.
Really?
And that was not my plan to go to the same college. But my cousin went to that college and he was a lacrosse player and I played lacrosse. So although we went to the same college, it was fun to share that experience. I kind of followed my cousin there. Your ski friend, Peter Smith.
Don't know him.
Yeah.
Don't.
So yeah.
I know that guy. Pizza slice, French fry, Smith. Pizza
Yeah.
slice in his French fry,
Yeah.
pizza slice. That's great. All right, so you get in, and then so the plan was whatever Brian Klepper was going to do, you wanted to do as well. And I think we should change the name of this podcast to Life with Klepper because there hasn't been one where we haven't thrown him under the bus. Kleppy, I love you. I'm sorry, it's just too easy.
So in the back of my mind, I remember, Klepper's mom has 8 siblings, and I knew 7 of them. Whether it was Brian's mom or his cousin Denny's dad or uh, Sean OD, who was my cousin Eric's counselor, Megan OD, who was more my sister's age, uh, Colleen OD. I mean, I know them all except for the one uncle who went to med school because I was too young when he was around our neighborhood. And then he was off at med school when I was old enough to know what was going or college, then med school, then the Navy. He was the one I didn't know. And Brian kept talking about his uncle who was in ortho and he liked ortho. And Brian was a big seller on ortho's going to be great because when you're a third year med student, you don't know. Like you're choosing something that you're going to do for the next 35 years. And I think
Right.
fortunately I got lucky, but I don't think everybody gets lucky like that. Like we interviewed Steve Brown. He absolutely loves what he does, but I think some doctors, they choose their third year med school. Maybe it wasn't the best choice for them, but now they're 15 years in. What do they do?
They
That's their
they got to write it
livelihood.
out. Yep.
And I think that probably, probably is part of physician burnout. But I saw people like Dr. Appelfeld, Dr. Woodward, Dr. Makoviak, who clearly loved what they were doing their whole career. And I feel fortunate that I fell into that.
So this uncle of Brian's,
Yeah.
Dr. Terry O'Donovan.
Yes. Terrence.
Okay,
Yeah.
Terrence. So Dr. Terrence, so he hired you guys because Brian was his nephew, and you were the nephew's friend. So he had to take you. That's my understanding.
Yeah. I had to go to residency first.
Brian
Uh,
did not. I heard
no. Brian worked, I think, at a golf course and
he
then
did, and then
was
was
hired.
folding pizza boxes. He was
Yeah.
folding pizza boxes, and then started working for Terry when
Yeah.
you started.
Yeah. So I did my residency at University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. And that
Galveston,
was a
Texas.
Texas. Yeah, that was a
Okay.
great place. And the way it works in medicine is it's different than college, is that you apply places, you get all these interviews, and then you rank every place you got an interview. And then the programs rank you and the computer matches you up. And it was one of my top 2 choices. But I had kind of thought that I was going to stay home in Maryland, but I just love the program in Galveston and it was a little closer to Ann's family, which was a great place to be having kids. And then in medicine, after your residency, you do fellowship. And I did my fellowship at Louisville, which at the time was one of the premier hand places in the country, which is funny because in medicine, some of the top places they're not necessarily name recognizable for outside of medicine.
Right.
Um, and I really liked hand surgery. I really liked sports medicine. I really liked general orthopedics, but I was really glad that I did a hand surgery fellowship. And it was a hard year, but it was a super cool year because that's farmland. So that's where people are cutting off their arms and cutting off their hands. And I know it sounds crazy, but like it's pretty
Oh yeah.
thrilling when you're reattaching an arm. And it was a big program, lots of fellows and lots of camaraderie. And it was an international fellowship. So like I was meeting people from all over the world. And a lot of these people are out in practice, professors at institutions in Europe or the Middle East or Asia. And they kind of would come to Louisville, I think, when they were about to get tenure. So they were assistant professors. They would come for their fellowship before they would become full professors. So even some of the fellows you were working with just had a ton of cool experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So So what do you think makes you a really good doctor?
Hmm. Trick question. So I think one of the biggest things with any surgeon is knowing who to operate on, who not to operate on, and also staying in your wheelhouse, like knowing when to refer people, especially in a place like Baltimore, where, for instance, like some of the best foot and ankle surgeons in the world are right in this area. Some of the best joint surgeons, some of the best sports surgeons, so it's kind of knowing which which surgeries are your A plus surgeries and sticking to your A plus surgeries. And then also, I think what you talked about, I think you have to be a good teacher, so
Yeah.
when you have to be able to explain um, what is going on to the patient. And it's funny, data shows that patients only retain about like 30% of what we tell them. And that's why, like we were talking about before, where you were going to the doctor with a family member, it's really good to have those sets of ears. But
Yep.
from a doctor perspective, you got to realize you might have to repeat the same thing over and over again, like the big points. Like you don't want to do, say, like a big surgery, like a knee replacement on somebody, and they think they're going to be better in 2 weeks. You want to make sure they understand it's a long haul. And because their neighbor might have been that 5% that was
Right.
better in 2 weeks. And that happens all the time where people are like, oh, yeah, you fixed my carpal tunnel and you did great. So I want you to do
I want the
my,
same. Right.
whatever it is. I was better the next day. So I want you to do my rotator cuff. And you're like, no, no, rotator cuffs are different. They take 3 to 6 months, that kind of thing. So you really
Well,
have to be a good teacher. And I think that's part, like you could tell from our interview with Steve Brown how
that's what I was going to say.
enthusiastic he was for his job. And I think that comes across to patients being enthusiastic like that. And I know that I see still, my dad's been retired for, I mean, he's been passed away since 2016, maybe. And he was retired for 10 years probably before that. And I still see his patients who just want to tell Dr. House stories because they liked him so much. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I think,
Here's
um,
why I think you're a good doctor. And dead serious. And this is going to come across, but I think you teach very well. I think you listen very well, and you're sensitive enough. So if someone comes in and says, "Hey, this is what's going on," you're sensitive enough to read the room and ask that additional question, or really get to know the patient and figure out what's going on. And I've seen you do it, and it's pretty impressive. So that's why I think you're a good doctor. And I'll cut that out later.
yeah, I do think the small talk matters. Like joking to a Dallas Cowboy fan that I'm going to still take good care of them, even
Right.
though they're a Dallas Cowboy fan. It starts
It
to
is.
joke in, you
It,
get talking about football and stuff like
yeah.
that. And I see that in just in conversations with my son-in-law, who is a resident right now in internal medicine down in Texas. And just, he has life experience where he can have conversations with people. And he sees some med school students now who just haven't had, they struggle with that part. They struggle
Right.
with the having, like, their MCATs might be great, their grades might be great, but they can't have those extra conversations. They
Right.
just don't have the life experience.
Right. And you definitely have a lot of life experience because you're like in your late 50s now. So you have a lot more life experiences than I do. But
Yes.
I also think that helps you be more relatable. And
Yeah.
I think that's what patients want is relatability. So you've had these mentors that you've
Yes.
mentioned. Were they mentors in the sense where they were like, "Hey, you should try to do this," or were they more role models? I think there is a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. So this is kind of funny. So I had more of the role models, who would be like, say, like the Morrises, who I looked at and I was like, they were more role models. Actually,
Right.
Dr. Appelfeld and Dr. Makoviak and Dr. Woodward were actually my instructors in medical school.
Right.
And it was funny because Dr. Woodward, we know his grandson, his granddaughter, but he lived in the same community we did. He didn't live there anymore when he was older, but he lived there he knew the same people we knew,
Right.
and he would ask me and Brian, like there'd be a class of 100 people. We were always going to be the first people asked a question. Like he knew exactly who we were. He knew who my grandparents were. He knew who my parents were. And you couldn't hide. Even to the point where Brian has a funny story where he had to strip down in front of the whole class for Dr. Woodward to do an exam on him. And then Dr. Applefeld and
Write
Dr.
that one down.
Well, so Dr. Applefeld and Dr. Makoviak, uh, I'm pretty sure they took the president and the vice president. So second year med school, you do physical diagnosis class. So it's your first year of treating patients. You learn how to take a history, how to do a physical exam. And they took like the president and the vice president every year, or they took the number one and number two person in the class every year. But our year, they took me and Brian. I think Dr. McCobiac felt bad for whipping my butt in golf like 3 years in a row at that age. But I asked both of them to do my letters for orthopedics. I had two of them and then one of the orthopedic doctors at shock trauma. And a lot of med students, orthopedics is very hard to get into. They would get whatever bigwig barely knew them to write their letter. And I asked two people out of the specialty who knew me really well. And I had several program directors say that they were the best letters they'd ever seen. And when I was a fifth year resident, I was the resident representative on the faculty meetings. So I would go to all the faculty meetings. Uh, so I had some access when we were doing residency applications, and I actually read Dr. Makoviak's letter. And he said something in there very politely, but he is a lot smarter than his sense of humor seems, something like that. He appears or something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Makes sense. So, all right. So now you're a doctor, you're a surgeon, and you've got what, 7 kids?
I have 4 kids. Yeah. Ryan was born my first month into residency. My first month into internship, Ryan was born.
Okay.
So I don't remember that year. Mostly what I remember that year was falling asleep in Ryan's bed and him crawling over me because I was supposed to be reading him a book or a story.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you've got a couple daughters in there who have personalities that
Yes.
are, so basically you do have like 7 kids just because of their big personalities.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the other one is
Roddy.
Rod
Roddy. Yes. Yeah.
Roddy.
Yes.
Okay.
He
All right.
he's
And
at
all right,
he's at
we'll cut that out
university.
also.
Yeah, he's at University of Arkansas right now, and they are in the Sweet 16. And if they win and Maryland wins, they'll match up, and it'll be Maryland
That's exciting.
Razorbacks. Yeah.
That is exciting. But and your daughters are awesome as well.
Don't you want to know how I ended up with Dr. Don't you want to know how
Well,
I ended up with Dr. Klepper in practice? You don't want to know about that, or with Terry?
no, I know that. Terry, Brian's mom said to her brother Terry, "You have to hire Brian and Brian's best friend, or it's going to be an all-out war, and or he's going to be a trash man forever, and Ann's going to divorce him. So she's got all these kids, so you got to take them, and the rest is history. And now Terry's in Florida all the time, so it's a
Yeah,
pretty good deal on Terry's part.
like
Um,
that.
yeah, so you're in medicine, you're seeing different people. You've always been active. You were a competitive bodybuilder. You did kickboxing. You've done shark
The
wrestling.
sport of the
You
future.
it is the sport of the future. Your kickboxing career. You were a break dancer and a skateboarder. Um, what got you into, hey, let me figure out the importance of community, starting like these challenges, putting that out there? What made you want to go out there and expose your goofiness, your silliness on the social media platforms that you are today?
So, in orthopedics, you and I've said this a lot is your patients kind of fall into two categories. So, uh, Steve mentioned in our podcast that a lot of orthopedic patients are healthy patients and then they have an injury. So, for instance, like you're a very healthy person, you used to be a big time runner, now you walk, you do yoga, you play sports, you hurt your shoulder, you get your shoulder fixed. You're doing great. You might have another orthopedics thing, but your orthopedist might not see you for 5 to 10 years. And the only
Right.
reason Dr. Bear, who was your surgeon, would know how you're doing is because we mentioned you to him, you know? Uh, that's group one. That's your healthy orthopedic patient at all ages. But then you have more your frequent flyers, and those people are people who have issues with chronic inflammation. So chronic inflammation makes your arthritis worse. We all get some arthritis, but it's way more symptomatic if you're chronically inflamed. It gives you tendonitis, it gives you bursitis. All the different tissues in the musculoskeletal system can get more inflamed. And it's not unusual that somebody might have 15 surgeries over 10 years at all different body parts. So maybe you get your knee scoped, and then you get your carpal tunnel done, and then you get your trigger finger done, and then you get your rotator cuff done, and then your knee needs to be replaced, and then you get a disc in your neck. Uh, and a lot of that can be prevented by lifestyle. So not all of it, but some of it can. If you have some arthritis in your knee, you're like, my knee's killing me. What's going on? But as those things go to the systemic system, so the organs, your internal organs, they are often silent killers. So high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, all these things are silent. And so the orthopedic injury is often the shot across the bow that kind of wakes you up to be like, oh, I might have some inflamed problems. And so I started looking at these two different patient populations, and I was just like, I feel like a lot of people just don't know. They think a lot of stuff is just bad luck. Like it's bad luck
Right.
I have type 2 diabetes. It's bad luck I have high blood pressure. It's bad luck I'm obese. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's your lifestyle. And then there's also degrees. Like if we're talking about some people are going to be more prone to type 2 diabetes, but you can still prevent it with lifestyle. Some people are more prone to be obese. Some people can eat whatever they want and not gain a pound, and other people have to watch it their whole life. Uh, but one of my big things is I just want people to know, uh, have the information, and then they can choose if they want to live healthy or not. But I at least want them to correlate um, their lifestyle with their orthopedic injury. And now it's tough because I'm not saying that if you're totally healthy and you eat perfectly healthy, you can avoid knee replacement. No, if you had a lacrosse injury in college and your knee was destroyed, but I do see people who maybe they got their knee replacement at 59 or 60, but if they lived a poor lifestyle, they would have gotten it done 15 years ago, and it wouldn't just be their knee; it would be both knees and a hip, kind of thing. So
So
that was one of my big drives with the whole lifestyle thing.
now I understand why patients only get about 30%, and I think it's probably about 10%
Yeah,
because that was way long.
yeah,
And I fell asleep. My eyes were
yeah.
closed. I drooled a
Sorry,
little bit. I don't know if
sorry.
you saw that, but so it's basically you're from your many years of being in this business. You're basically small lifestyle changes can lead to bigger health changes. Is that
Yes.
fair?
Yeah.
Is that just trying to sum that up real quick?
That so basically, I believe that if you eat healthy 90% of the time, and we can either get into that tonight or another time, at 90% of the time, that doesn't mean that you can't eat whatever you want, but that should be like 10% of the time. And I think that if you exercise, you are, first of all, going to be way less likely to have orthopedic surgery. But if you do need orthopedic surgery, you're going to recover way quicker, and you're a much better candidate to have a good result with surgery.
Right.
So,
And
like if you had a bad knee and we had to do your knee replacement, you would be the dream patient for a knee replacement. So about 10%, but 10% of people don't like their knee replacement, but you'd be like the 1%. Like there's a 1 or 2% chance you wouldn't like your knee replacement
right.
versus somebody else. It might be a 20% chance that they're not going to like their knee replacement.
But back to, eating healthy 90% of the time. You're also realistic enough that people don't have to exercise as vigorously as probably people like you and I like to.
So,
I think
yeah.
from just being around you, just small things. It's the walking. It's so you can sprint every now and then. It's not you don't have to. If this isn't who you are, don't force it.
So I think our society has we've gotten enamored with the big events, and that's caused a roller coaster. So it's like you do a marathon and it's great. My wife's done 2 marathons. You've done marathons. Like all my cousins have done marathons, and it's great to do marathons. But like my cousins, they do a marathon and they start jogging the next day or still going on walks. Other people do a marathon and then they're done.
Right.
They're like I crossed that off, and it's more important. It's not necessarily the marathon or the triathlon or the getting in shape to go to the beach or the getting in shape for your wedding is to make exercise consistent. So the 2 miles you walk is better than the 5 miles you didn't run. So I think we get way into thinking that like, oh, my blood pressure's a little high. They say I'm pre-diabetic. I need to start running. And if you hate running, then you quit. Versus if you're like, okay, I need to get out there and walk 3 miles with my dog, pushing the stroller, whatever it is, 4 days a week. That's a start. So that's part of the reasons for the
Right.
challenges is to be like, you don't have to do this craziness. Like you can, if you walk 3 to 4 days a week, the sprint thing once a week, and I realize that a lot of people aren't going to sprint, but the point is, why do you stop sprinting the last time you played sports? Like we should be able to sprint way longer than that. So if you stop playing sports at 17, or if you stop playing sports at 22, you should still be able to sprint at 35, 40, 50, or whatever. It's a great exercise and it's quick. So the sprint challenge was 8 sprints of 20 seconds long. And you did a sprint every 2 minutes. So you were done your workout in 14 minutes and 20 seconds. And it's a hard workout
Yep.
if you sprinted hard. I mean, you could sprint 80%, you could sprint 50%, but the point is you're moving your body and you're done quick. The push-up challenge, doing 50 to 100 push-ups, spread it throughout the day is not that hard. Now you have to have strength, but that's why there's modifications. You do it on your knees or
Right.
whatever. So basically, I think the challenges are to show that it doesn't have to be that hard uh, to live a healthy lifestyle. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to be a power lifter. You don't have to drive an hour to the gym, work
Right.
out, and then drive a half hour back. There's lots of ways to do it. And it's partly just saying, hey, let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing with the nutrition. It's like, keep it simple. Uh, and part of the before we ever got to the podcast or the social media was I started my website, and the one thing I did was common people have common problems. So not when you look up, the saying that Dr. Woodward used to say is, if you hear hoofbeats on Green Street, don't look up and expect to see a zebra. We see horses in the office. So if you have a problem and you're coming in and I see your age and elbow pain or numbness and tingling in your hand or shoulder pain, we pretty much know that there's a 90% chance you have the most common diagnoses. So the website, I wanted to put the most common diagnoses on the website, like the things, these are the top diagnoses for every body part I see, so that if I tell you the whole thing and you're like, what did he say again? You just refer to it. And it's basically in my words, pretty much exactly what I told you. Um,
And you started your website is webmd.com.
yeah, it is therealhousemd.com.
Oh, the Real House
And then the other
MD.com.
thing was, I'm a huge believer in physical therapy. And our next guest we're having later this week is a physical therapist. And honestly, the number one reason to go to the doctor of any kind, I think, is back pain. And if we all did basically 5 minutes of physical therapy for our back, 3 times a week, 5 minutes, 3 times a week, 15 minutes, we would decrease the number of back pain visits 100-fold. Like,
Okay.
doesn't say people wouldn't need back surgery, but if you just took care of your back, and it's the same thing with shoulders. Like, if you took care of your shoulders, you would decrease your chance of getting shoulder pain. So I had so many relatives who would be like, my back's been hurting a day, my shoulder's been hurting a day. I'd be texting them and be like, oh, try these therapy exercises. If you're not better in 2 weeks, then call me. And I did that so often. I was like, you know what? I should put these on a website for my patients to
Right.
explain to them why therapy helps for their problem, and go from there. And that's how the website started. The podcast is because I started writing blogs about nutrition or about exercise or about sports, and Klepper was like, your blogs are too long, nobody's going to read them.
He was right.
And so I started podcasting. And then you were like, Ty, you ramble too much. You need a co host. And it was like Jimmy Chitwood stepping up and saying, if Ty stays, I will be the co-host. If Ty leaves, I'll leave. And you came into the town hall and you believed in me. And now, now it's just taken off that we have 200 listeners.
And I keep saying, don't get caught watching the paint dry. Is what I
Yes.
keep telling you.
Yeah. 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 Uh,
Well, no, it's great, and I think
and
we're helping people.
and sometimes I feel like Shooter, like just watching the world. Like when he was sitting up there when Coach Dale said my team was on the court, like the guy fouled out and he didn't sub in. He played with four
Right.
guys and the whole town's going crazy. And Shooter's up there and he knew what was going on. He's like, you're breaking down the horses.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
that's what
doing.
you're
I'm
doing.
above it all. I'm like, I see how the world's going.
You are breaking down the horses.
Yeah.
That is what you. That is really. That's the subtitle of this episode. Breaking down the
Yes.
horses. All right. So we figured everything out. We got some exciting stuff coming up with new challenges, new guests that are coming. Excited for that. But at the end of the podcast that I do with my friend Ty, we
Uh,
have some questions.
are you
You
going to
know,
explain the whole Ty, Hugh,
well,
Dr. House thing?
hey, are you
Because
the
I think
host? Are you the
I'm just
host?
saying, I
All right,
think we've
why don't you just
confused
shut
a
up and
lot of
just sit back?
people. Okay.
We are.
Okay.
So, all right. My first question, honest to God, is why is your name? Why are you commonly referred to as the Love Machine? I mean, I'm sorry, wrong one, wrong one. Why are you commonly referred to as Ty? My understanding is it's short for tissue.
Yes, it should be. 'Cause I cried so much when the Colts
Yes,
left
yeah,
town.
that's right. We all started calling you Tissue House.
So, my name is Hugh Osgood House. I'm named after my grandfather. And there's a little bit of debate. My mom wanted me to be called Hugh Roddy, which is her father's name and my uncle's name and my cousin Eric's name and my cousin Avery's name and my son's name. Uh, and there was a little bit of debate. My mom did not want me to be called Little Huey. She did not like the name Huey. She liked the name Hugh. The compromise was my dad was like, he's got two older sisters. We're gonna call him Tiger. And my mom liked the nickname Tiger. So I was called Tiger. And then when I went to school, I think they shortened it to Ty, or maybe even before then. And so Ty is short for Tiger, which is really kind of weird because it has nothing to do with Hugh Osgood. So I have a
Yes,
nickname for my nickname, which is very confusing. And I've always liked my name, but I've never realized that people probably have a hard time tracking me down. Like if they're like, "Oh, you should go see Ty," and then they probably look in the and they Google Ty House and there's nothing there. So it's
and
Ti like
oh, it's
Tiger.
Ti.
It's Ti like
See,
Tiger.
I've
Yeah,
been selling the TY.
yeah,
Okay, I'm learning a
yeah,
lot tonight. I'm learning a lot
yeah.
tonight. Um, so you're all about
And I
fitness.
do
You're
I do have a funny story where one time when I was first in practice, I went to drop something off at Dr. O'Donovan's house, and his younger son opened the door and said, "Hey, what's up, Ty?" And he goes, I mean, Mr. House. And then his older son from downstairs goes, "It's Dr. House, you dumbass."
it's about right. You're this avid outdoorsman. You hunt, you fish, you camp out, you
I,
catch fish. You catch fish with your bare hands. Um, I know you don't. So give me a guilty pleasure. What's one of your guilty pleasures?
so this is one of my things is I think I'm a little bit of an idiot savant. I know a ton about medicine and 1980s football, but I don't know what a guilty pleasure is. So my
Right.
favorite guilty pleasure. Oh, this is hard. This is a hard question. Is okay. It's obvious. Chocolate chip cookies, homemade chocolate chip cookies. So when Mary Kate, who is my daughter who just graduated from college a year ago, she's living at home, and She made chocolate chip cookies. Anne was out of town, and Mary Kate had one, maybe two. I had like 28. And if Anne was there, Anne might have had one, Mary Kate might have had one, and I still would have had 28. And
Right.
I literally was like, oh, I'll have four with my coffee in the morning. Oh, I'll have four at lunch. I'll have four at dinner. I'll have four before I go to bed. And
Do you have
so,
milk with them, or are you
oh
just always
yeah,
just
no,
wolfing them down?
I dip them in milk. I dip them in
Okay,
milk.
good,
But
fair.
I am not a huge sweet person or dessert person. But when they're in front of me, so I'm one of those people who like, and I wrote a blog about making your home a safe space, not a safe space,
Right.
like a base for healthy food. So if you don't have a bunch of junk in your home, then your only thing
It's
is
pretty
that you
easy.
might eat junk when you're out. But if everything's healthy in your home, but I'm one of those people in that like I will demolish like when I'm like, okay, I'm eating whatever, I'll demolish a pizza, I'll demolish chocolate chip cookies, but I would say that stuff like that is my guilty pleasure.
Yeah, no, I've seen you do it, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
It is not pretty.
And I still can eat with the best of them.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. We've often thought you're going to eat your way to college.
And honestly, I think
Um,
there's nothing wrong with that because I think I work out harder the next day and I think it actually sets me back on track to be like, all right, now you're gonna, you know,
be good.
I'm probably a once a week dessert type of person. But like when we were on vacation last week, I had dessert every night. I had some cookies in the afternoon, like a little kid would have cookies in the afternoon. And then I came back this week totally rejuvenated to kind of like eat healthy. And I'm like, but I'm also one of those people who's like, my knees hurting a little bit, my elbows hurting a little bit. I think this got to
Hmm.
be the sugar. It can't be that I'm 56. It's got to be the sugar.
It's got to be the sugar.
Yeah.
Athletics have been a big part of your life. They dominate the majority of your conversations, to much to the boredom of those people that, like myself, that have to listen to you. Um,
Phil loves the stories. That's why he encouraged me to do a podcast. He wanted to hear about them in detail.
no, no, he wanted you to tell them to somebody else, and then he could just pretend like you listened. Um, God, I really wish you spit that out your nose. Anyhow, anyhow,
Are we going to mention about my spitting things out the nose?
that all right. What? When was the last time you spit something through your nose, and what is usually the catalyst of that reaction?
So, you, of all people, had a habit of you would pay attention, you would closely watch, and you would wait for me to take a sip of whatever it was. And that's when you would say your punchline, hoping that I would laugh. And instead of spitting it across the room, I'd hold my breath and it would come out my nose. And I forget what kid it was, but I think it was Mary Kate did that. Like you literally made a joke
Yeah,
and she did it. And I was like so proud because I was like, she's just like her dad.
we said no DNA test needed. That was it. That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. All right. So, what is your walkout song to whatever sporting event you want? If it's going to play baseball, walk into the first tee, to the rest of that, what is your theme music?
It would be the song they play during round 14 of Rocky One. So it's the scene where in round 14, Rocky gets knocked down, looks like the fight's over, and Mickey's actually saying, stay down. And Rocky gets up, and the look on Apollo Creed's face, like, this is freaking unbelievable. And like, he just doesn't want to be there anymore. And then Rocky gets up, and then it's the break between 14 and 15 where he's like, I can't say anything. You got to cut my
Cut
eye.
me.
Yep.
Yep.
That is the greatest song ever. And we can do a whole podcast on my love of Rocky and all the movies and why they mean so much to me. But I just think the spirit of like, you can't be kept down in that movie is incredible.
That's the one.
Yep.
All right. Um, it's going to happen to all of us.
Uh-huh.
We're all going to pass away at some point.
Yes.
I'm not a doctor, but I just thought I should tell you that. What do you want St. Peter or God, who I'm not saying who you're believing, to say to you when they greet you at the pearly gates?
Oh my gosh. Why did you never ask any of the other guests these hard questions?
Because I save the good stuff for I save my A material for my A guests.
Uh,
I do this on my own podcast. I got my own
well,
podcast, actually.
this raises another subject I want to bring up before we fade off. But what I would want him to say is, they're here and they've been waiting for you. And I'd like to see all my family. So I'd like to see Eric. I'd like to see my grandparents, my uncle Roddy, my sister Erin. Uh, I have a grandmother I never met. She died in her 20s. I'd like to see my dad. I'd like them all to be there together. Uh, and I would hope that they'd be. I know this is way more serious than you probably expected, but I would like St. Peter to be like, hey, they're here and they're waiting for you. And I got a couple dogs in there that like. I'd like Samson and Dallas to be there, and and
For
well, I honestly imagine that it would be my sister and my dad and Eric waiting for
yeah,
me, and uh, and then my grandparents with them. And my dad's grandmother died when he was 3, so I mean, my dad's mother died when he was 3, so I'd really like to think that they'd be there together, you know. But we're on a we are on a serious conversation of I think that's part of the thing, is that when you're trying to be healthy, people have a tendency to think that you're trying to live forever, and that's not my point at all. And there's a longevity or a health doctor named Peter Attia, who actually I think trained in Baltimore, but his big point is it's about health span, not lifespan. You want to be as
right.
healthy as you can as long as you can. So something could happen to any of us. Like we could get hit by a bus tomorrow. We could get a unfortunate diagnosis. Whatever it is, you want to be as healthy as you can up to that point. So you don't ski a ton, but you're perfectly comfortable going skiing at 55 years old because you're a healthy guy.
54,
54,
54.
because you're a healthy guy. And there's so many things that some people can't do, like carry your grandkids up the stairs,
Right.
take your grandkids for a hike, run the complete route tree for your
Yeah.
quarterback grandson. So my point is, you might not live to 100, you might not live till 75, but you want to be as healthy as you can in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s as you can be. And any of us could be black swans, where it's just an unforeseen event that happens, and we know people who have really taken care of themselves, who were unfortunate. And you mentioned being unhealthy, and I start coughing. But my point is that sometimes you being in great shape is what buys you those extra. Are you gonna edit this?
Nope. Just gonna let you show you choke unless you spit it out your nose.
But sometimes that's what buys you the extra years to get you to those big moments to help you survive. But in the long run, it's just you want to be as healthy as you can as long as you can.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fascinating watching you choke on your milk.
Yeah.
Um, no, this has been fascinating and eye-opening, and I think it gives our 275,000 listeners,
Yeah.
our international listeners as well, um, a better insight into you and what we're doing here. And I think even though we joke around, I think there's a lot of serious stuff we cover, and I think we've helped a bunch of people with this from the things that we've seen. And I'm enjoying it. I hope the 200 people are as well that aren't just related to us. I think they have a better understanding of you and what's going on. So thank you for your time, and
Well,
we have to go.
so a funny thing is, I think we need to make a couple announcements. But on that note, when I first started this, my scribe, who is the person who in the office, somebody graduated from college thinking about going into medicine, they write the notes down. And Nick was my scribe, and he did a lot of the early work on the website. And the whole idea was, we had a patient who basically, I gave him the card and said, here's the website, got threw it immediately into the trash can. And Nick and I were like, it's just that one person who's like, hey, I read your stuff or I listened to your podcast, that it helps them. So if you can only help one person every couple podcasts, that could be great. And the podcast Emma did about nutrition for young women, like, people were coming up to her at a Christmas party being like, who were a little bit younger than her. She's 25 and were like, that really, really helped me. Like girls in college were like, that really, really
Yeah,
helped me. You had people with your Living Sober one that like, hey, that really helped them, or it put a spark in their mind. And I
yeah,
know the Dr. Brown one helped people, and I think that you're like, well, what are you guys doing this for? Like, why are you talking to people for an hour? And it's like, because it only takes, it's worth it if you help one person.
absolutely, absolutely. And as always, I enjoy being with you, so it makes it easier. So good work, keep it up, and
Oh, and my
you know,
announcement was that we added a new head of I was about to say social security, social media. We added a new head of social media. So it's
we
funny.
did.
She is a student at SMU University in Dallas, Texas, which shows you how famous we've become across the nation. But
Yeah.
she's an up and coming entrepreneur business student, and she was like, "Hey, can I get in on the ground level of this?" And we don't pay a lot. So she
Well,
jumped
if you
in.
saw the tuition at SMU, you would.
Well, we did put her on scholarship at
We did.
SMU.
We
You
gave her a
said you would
scholarship.
take care of that
Yeah.
for us. But Maggie
And she opened up our
Waldron
Dallas. Yep. She
opened
opened
up
up
the
our
Dallas
Dallas office.
office. So Maggie Waldron is now our head of social media. So I think with her on board, we're going to have 200 views by the end of the month.
That's when the money starts
Yeah.
rolling in.
Yeah.
That's when it's
So
all
I wanted
about.
to
And
give her
look,
a shout out because she's been
yes,
amazing, and
she's been great.
I think she thinks we're slackers
She
because
totally thinks we're
she's like,
slackers.
what? You took a week off last week? You just
You
started.
both did?
You had your best episode yet, and now you're tired and you need a break. She's so
And you're only going to talk to Ty?
she's so
Loser.
disappointed in us.
Yeah. She's like, I should have gone back to Rogan.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
well, all right, bud. Let's keep it rolling.
Okay. I'll see you
All right, man.
Thursday for our next exciting podcast.
Can't wait.
See ya.